If you're having problems with a Volvo radiator cooling fan, hopefully this video will save you some time and money. My car happens to be a 2011 Volvo S80 with about 170,000 miles, but this same fix can be applied to other years and certain other models. First, I'll describe the car's symptoms and the headaches I went through before actually fixing the problem. Secondly, I'll show you a handy trick that saved me at least a couple hours of work and probably $100. Overall, doing this myself, I saved about $600. The problem was the cooling fan wouldn't turn off. The problem happened suddenly and without warning. One day I drove the car to the store. When I parked and got out, I noticed the fan was running at a high speed. It was loud enough that I thought I didn't even turn the car off. It has a keyless ignition, so I thought it's possible I forgot to hit the off button. I double-checked and the car was off. I even turned the engine on and off again, but the same thing happened. I went into the store for about 20 minutes. When I returned, the car fan was still running at the same high speed. I knew something wasn't right. I drove home, parked, and it did the same thing. The fan would not turn off. Not knowing anything about the problem, but knowing eventually my battery would go dead, I disconnected the battery to stop the fan. Even living in the hot desert, it was very rare for the fan to keep running after the car was turned off. When it did, it would only stay on for maybe a minute longer. I started Googling and YouTubing for help. I found out that many people had experienced the same problem as their cars reached about 130 to 160,000 miles. Many of the articles and videos described a failed control unit that's attached to the fan assembly. People had success by simply replacing that module, which is basically a small electronic unit. I saw that part ranging from about $80 to $150 new. Unfortunately, many of the articles also described having to at least partially remove the fan assembly to be able to access the module and the screws holding it in place. Because I didn't have the time myself, I took the car to a shop to have them diagnose and verify the cause. They let me know it was the module and they could fix it the next day. I'm too embarrassed to admit how much they charged. Let's just say it was several multiples above the part price. I knew it was gouging, but I had to get it done. Jumping ahead 7 months, one evening my wife calls me at 8 p.m. after visiting family for several hours to tell me the car won't start. She says the battery appears to be dead. She says no lights, no horn, no radio, no door chime, which, if you've had batteries go bad due to age or slow drain, this kind of sounded fishy to me. So I grabbed a few tools and some jumper cables and made the 20-mile drive to help. As soon as I connected the jumper cables, I hear the fan start racing. I knew exactly what happened. I asked her if she noticed anything unusual when she parked, and she said yes, it sounded like the car was still running, but I made sure it wasn't. So it seemed as though the same part failed and the battery got completely drained. Needless to say, I wasn't happy about the failed part, but at least the shop that had done the work before said it was under warranty and they would replace it again for free. I thought, okay, probably just bad luck with a bad part. A couple days later, they replaced the part again and called me up with the news. They said that installing the new module didn't stop the fan from running. They said the entire fan unit was bad and I needed to replace the whole thing to the tune of about $800 to $950. There would be no credit for the prior works. It's entirely a different problem. They said the bad fan unit may be causing the module to fail. The part quote was $500. He mentioned having to drain the coolant too to remove a hose, which added $140 to the quote. And that leads us to this video, me showing you how I fixed the problem in my own driveway in 2 hours for $220. It turns out the fix, at least for my car and certain other Volvos, is not that bad. The work is pretty darn simple if you're willing to give it a shot and use a little non-conventional ingenuity. The biggest revelation I had for this job is that the entire fan unit is held in by just 4 clip brackets. There's a tab on each corner of the fan assembly, and the unit literally just slides into the clips. With just a screwdriver for some gentle prying, you should be able to lift the unit straight up. Some cars might have a single screw in the bottom center of the unit, but my car didn't. And in my case, one of the upper clips was actually busted, so my fan was actually held in with just 3 clips. I took care of this problem later. So after learning the simplistic way that the fan assembly is attached to the car and seeing that there's quite a bit of room around the fan itself, I realized worst case was I might have to remove a single radiator hose to get the unit out. It was a no-brainer. I thought maybe I'd get lucky and not have to remove anything. The only thing you do have to remove is you have to unplug the cable that runs to the control unit for power. Sometimes I worry about parts fitting when I order online. I found a new double fan unit, just like mine, with a control module and with free 3-day shipping for $220. The picture and details seem to match exactly what I was replacing. That said, I didn't even try to remove the old unit until the new one arrived. First, I wanted to visually check that it looked the same. Second, I wanted to physically measure the fit. And third, and most important, I wanted to plug the fan cable into the new unit with the car off to make sure the fan didn't kick on. I knew if the fan kicked on, I'd probably be returning the unit because the problem likely lied elsewhere. When the part arrived, I unboxed it and everything matched up. It seemed identical. I wanted to run my tests. With the car off, I laid the new fan unit on top of the engine to test it, but I couldn't get the fan cable to reach the control unit. So I had to unscrew the control unit from the new fan assembly to give me extra play in the line to make that connection. Although it's possible, it's difficult to do this all alone. Having someone hold the unit while you make the connection is best, and you want to make sure you keep your fingers away from all the blades during the test. Once plugged in, I was happy to see the fan stay still. That was test number 1. I didn't want to install a wrong or bad unit, so I decided to perform the same test with the car running. This time the fans did come on, as expected. And lastly, I turned the car off one more time and made the test with good results. In summary, I tested with the car off, then with the car on, then with the car off. It all worked, and it was time to make the swap. As I mentioned, there's quite a bit of room around the fan, and particularly between the fan and the engine. Just by looking at things, I had some hope that there was enough room to get my hands on what I needed. I jacked up both sides of the front end of the car by about 5 or 6 inches, just enough to get a look underneath. I was happily surprised to be able to see the bottom of the fan assembly, the lower clips, and all the way up through the engine compartment. It took a little effort to lift the assembly out of the clips. Once it was out, it was loose, but as expected, it didn't just lift right out. I figured there would be some work negotiating around other parts, and I was right. I tried multiple times pushing and pulling flexible hoses out of the way and trying to lift the fan at different angles and such. After about 15 minutes, I was about to give in to removing other parts, like the radiator hose. But I could tell all I needed was about another inch to inch and a half to get it out. I noticed the lower driver's side tab was getting stuck on the transmission oil cooler. I could tell once that tab cleared that it would come right out. Remember at the beginning of this video I mentioned using a bit of unconventional ingenuity? This is when I thought, what if I just cut that tab off? Could I do that to get the old unit out and to put the new unit in? I decided to give it a try. Here's my high-tech animation showing the problem and the fix. This view is from the engine looking forward, so the left side is the driver's side. Imagine the fan unit sitting in the 4 brackets. The black vertical lines represent obstacles on the sides of the engine compartment. Also notice the transmission oil cooler on the left. As illustrated, you can see the tab is blocked by the oil cooler, and the fan unit can't be lifted out. Using this hacksaw, I went below and cut off the tab. I cut only the thin part of the tab, up to the point it starts getting thicker on the fan assembly frame. I wanted to leave the frame's integrity unchanged and leave an anchor point to reattach the new tab. After cutting the tab, the fan assembly was able to be lifted out with only minimal maneuvering. I decided my plan in reverse was going to work for the new fan assembly. My plan was to cut the same tab off the new unit, manufacture a replacement tab, slide the new assembly loosely into the engine compartment, attach the manufactured tab, then secure the fan unit into the 4 brackets. I was debating on what to use for the new tab. I thought about using a piece of aluminum or steel, but by chance I came across this hard plastic shim, which seemed almost perfect. I measured for length and width and cut the piece. Here's an example of how I did that. After cutting the piece of plastic, I pre-drilled 3 holes. This piece of wood represents the frame of the fan assembly. I attached the new tab to the forward-facing side of the assembly, closest to where the original tab protruded. The new tab slid perfectly into the clip. It's important to note that it's best to pre-drill everything, and having a 90-degree screwdriver really helps. This job took me about 2 hours, but I'm pretty sure I could do the whole thing in about 45 minutes now. No doubt there will be some purists who might criticize my so-called bush fix, but c'est la vie. This is a family daily driver and I'm perfectly fine with the time and money I saved. I know the fix will hold up as long as that new fan assembly does. The car is back on the road again and has been working successfully for over a month. When you think about this fix, it's actually pretty darn amazing that you can swap out an entire cooling fan assembly without removing a single other part. There's probably not many cars built in the last 20 years where you can do that. So I hope this video helped. I try to create videos that teach something, and particularly things I can't seem to find on the internet myself. At minimum, I want to show details that others don't. My goal is to have viewers benefit from watching. If you found this video useful, I'd love to hear your comments. Consider subscribing. Until next time, take care.